They found the boat before they found the man. It came in with the grey tide, past the reef where nothing was supposed to survive the crossing anymore, and it came in burning. Not the frantic orange of a fire trying to consume everything at once, a slow fire, low along the waterline, patient. The kind of fire that has already finished its work and is only tidying up after itself. The harbour watch pulled it in with grappling hooks because no one wanted to swim to it. When they turned it over on the black sand, there was a man inside, and he was, impossibly, still alive. He had been kept alive on purpose. That was the thing the healer said later, hands shaking, that she had seen burns before and drownings before and men who should have died of either, but never a man kept alive the way a letter is kept sealed, deliberately, carefully, so that it could still be read when it arrived. His name, when he could finally speak it, was the least important thing about him. The message was not in his hand, or in a satchel, or in his boot. It was sewn into his own skin, along the ribs, in a script old enough that only Wren recognized it at a glance, and when she did, her face went the particular white of a woman looking at a debt she had hoped never to collect. "Get Kai," she said. "Now. Don't wake the council. Get him first." The man on the sand opened his one good eye, found something in the grey morning to focus on, and used the last of himself to say the only 3 words he had crossed an ocean, half dead, to deliver. "He sent me home." Then he began, very quietly, to laugh. The sound of a man who knows exactly how much worse the joke gets, and is sorry, in advance, that he will not be there to watch anyone else understand it. Kai read it under the grey banner in the same weak light, with Wren close enough that her shoulder nearly touched his. Some readings, she had told him once, are not meant to be done alone. The script ran down the dying man's side in small, exact letters, written by a hand that had clearly practiced its cruelty on softer things first. To the ember who refused a throne. I did not refuse mine. I have learned the lesson you taught the old certainty across the water, that a throne only stands because everyone has agreed, for 300 years, not to ask whether it could be taken. I asked. I am not crossing the sea to conquer you, Kai of Ash. I am crossing it to ask you a different question, and I find I would rather ask it to your face than send it in a letter a lesser man could ignore. Bring your witness. Bring your knife holder. Bring the whole grey little house of 2 you are so proud of. The question is this: is mercy a gift a man can afford to give twice? Refuse me as sweetly as you refused Sale's mercy, and we will see which of us the world believes. I remain, with something almost like affection, the student who learned your lesson better than you meant to teach it. Vess. Kai read it 3 times. The 3rd time, his hand, the marked one, the one with the hungry ring, had gone very still, in the specific way it went still when he was working hard not to let it do something. "He's not threatening me," Kai said finally. "No," Wren agreed. Her voice had none of its usual edge. "That's the part that should frighten you. Threats are simple. This is an invitation." She looked at the ruined man on the sand, who had stopped laughing and started, very softly, to weep, which was somehow worse. "He sent a living letter, Kai. He wanted us to see what he's willing to spend to make a point. That's not war. That's a man showing you his hand before he's even sat down at the table, because he's certain enough of the outcome that he doesn't need to bluff." "What outcome?" Wren met his eyes. "That you'll say no, and that saying no to him will cost you exactly what saying no to Sale cost you a year ago. Everything. Except this time, the man on the other side of the no has an ocean, an empire, and no one left to refuse him. The council convened before noon, which on Blackflint was itself a kind of alarm bell. The crowns did not hurry for anything, as a matter of pride, and hurrying now told the lower town more than any crier could have. Sigil arrived pale and precise as ever, but there was a tightness at his jaw that Kai had learned, over a year of watching him, meant genuine fear rather than performed concern. Thrace came in her blue, with her hand already resting on her sword hilt, as though the enemy might be in the hall itself. The lesser crowns, Gaul and Oren, arrived already arguing, which told Kai they had already decided how this would go and were merely rehearsing the speeches. "The boy is the danger here," Lord Oren said, before the doors had fully closed. "Not the message. The message is proof. An empire across the sea has learned to speak the language of that house, and that house is sitting in our hall, wearing our island like a shield. I say we finish what the binding was meant to do a year ago. Better a knife in a known danger than a courtship letter to an unknown one." "You would hand Ves exactly what he asked for," Ren said sharply. "Kill the one thing on this island that can stand against what's coming. On the theory that a smaller danger is safer than a large one. That is not strategy. That is fear wearing strategy's coat." "It is caution," Oren snapped. "It is a quorum," Ren said. "Deciding, again, to kill someone lawfully, so that afterward every hand in this room can stay clean." She did not look at Kai when she said it, but everyone in the hall understood exactly which old wound she had just pressed her thumb into. Lord Gaul, who spoke rarely, and therefore was listened to when he did, folded his hands. "There is a third possibility no one has said aloud, that we do nothing, that we let the boy answer as he sees fit, and we watch what kind of enemy, or ally, that answer buys us. We have spent 300 years legislating our fear of that house. Perhaps it is time we tried simply watching one of them, honestly, before we decide again what he is." "Watching," Oren said, with contempt, "is what men do while the knife is already at their throat." Sigil raised a hand and, to Kai's genuine surprise, the room quieted for him, even Oren. "I did not come here to relitigate a debate I already lost a year ago," Sigil said. "I came because the letter changes the shape of the danger, and shape matters more than size. Ves is not offering war, he is offering succession. And a boy who is offered a throne and refuses it publicly, in front of witnesses, becomes something this island has never had before." A pause, cold and exact. "A hero the whole world can see. That is not a threat to be contained. That is a weapon to be pointed. Carefully, by us, or wildly, by him. I would rather it be pointed carefully." Kai had said nothing through all of it, watching 7 old houses argue about him as though he were a resource to be allocated rather than a man in the room, and something in him, old, tired, familiar, finally rose to the surface. "I'm not going to stand here while you decide what my refusal is worth to you," Kai said, and his voice was quiet, but it cut through the hall the way quiet things sometimes do, precisely because no one expects them to. "You want to know what I'll say to Ves? I don't know yet. I haven't decided. I won't decide it in this room, with 7 houses telling me which version of my own answer serves them best." He looked around the table, at Oren's contempt and Gaul's careful patience and Sigil's cold calculation, and let them all feel, for one long moment, exactly what it was to be looked at the way they had been looking at him for a year. "You spent 300 years afraid of a house that could unmake anything. You are about to find out what it costs you to spend the next war trying to use one instead." The silence that followed had teeth in it. It was Oren who broke it, predictably, with a formal motion, because Oren, whatever else he was, understood that words alone could not bind a boy who had already proven he did not fear a hall full of crowns. "Then let the record show," Oren said stiffly, "that House Ash is given 6 days to deliver a formal answer to this council, in addition to whatever he sends across the water. 6 days, and not one more, before this body reconsiders every mercy it has extended him. He did not look at Kai when he said it. He did not need to. Everyone in the hall had heard, in the number, the same grim coincidence Kai had heard. 6 days, the exact span of Corin's borrowed time, the exact span Vess himself had built into his letter. As though the whole island and the whole empire had somehow agreed, without meaning to, on how long mercy was allowed to last before it had to prove itself. Kai went to the grave before he went anywhere else. It was a small stone, low in the wet grass of the lower town, and someone, the fishwife probably, or one of the no-crowns who still came by out of a loyalty that had outlived the man it was given to, had left fresh flowers there, the cheap, hardy kind that grew wild along the cliffs and did not care how poor the soil was. Steward of House Ash. Kept the stair. Paid in full. Kai sat with the ledger open on his knees, the worn little book Det had kept faithfully for a year, and he found himself, not for the first time, talking to a stone as though it might still argue with him. "They want me to answer a tyrant with a speech," he told the grave. "You'd have an opinion about that. You always had an opinion." He almost smiled. "You'd tell me to write it down first. Get it right on paper before I said it out loud where it could hurt someone." The grass did not answer, because grass never did, and Kai had learned by now not to expect it to, and had also learned that it did not stop him from asking. A voice behind him, careful, young, trying very hard not to intrude. "My lord?" Kai turned. The boy, standing at a respectful distance, was perhaps 15, thin in the way of children who had grown up not always eating enough, holding a satchel of papers pressed to his chest like it might be taken from him. His name was Fen. He had come to the West Wing 3 weeks ago, the same way Pell once had. Quietly, hopefully, a no-crown offering the only thing he had, which was his loyalty, to the first lord in 300 years who had once had nothing either. Kai had let him carry the ledger since Det's death, because someone had to, and because turning away a boy who wanted only to be useful felt like a second kind of grief he was not prepared to survive. Now, looking at Fen's earnest, frightened face in the grey morning light, with a letter from an empire sewn into a dying man's skin not 4 hours old, Kai felt something in his chest go cold and clear, the way it had the night he understood what the law could do to the people who stood near him. "You should go home, Fen," he said quietly. "Wherever home is. Somewhere far from this house, for a while." The boy's face did something complicated. Hurt and stubbornness fighting each other in real time. "Det didn't go home," he said. "When it got dangerous. He stayed and kept the stair." He straightened his thin shoulders. "I'm not much good at anything yet, my lord. But I can keep a stair too, if you'll let me learn how." Kai closed the ledger very slowly, because he did not trust his hands, and because the boy could not be allowed to see how close that answer had come to breaking something in him. "Then learn quietly," Kai said finally, "and learn fast. And if I ever tell you to run, Fen, you run. That's not a request. That's the one order in this whole house that isn't open for argument. Not even from you." He held out the ledger. "Write down everything that happens today. All of it. Someday somebody is going to need to know exactly how this started, and I'd rather it was written by someone who was honest than remembered by someone who wasn't." He found Wren afterward on the sea wall, where she went when the day had been too full of other people's voices, staring out at water that had, as of that morning, stopped being merely water and started being the direction a war was going to come from. "You didn't say much in there," Kai said, joining her. "I said everything I needed to say a year ago," Wren answered, not looking at him. "Nothing's changed except the size of the men trying to spend you." A long pause, the wind pulling at her exile's grey. keep doing the arithmetic, Kai. 6 days from the council, 6 days from Vess, some number of days that nobody's told us, before actual ships instead of one burned boat. She wrapped her arms around herself, and for a moment the sharp Moran mask slipped entirely, and what was underneath it was simply frightened. I was raised to read rooms for a living. I have never once liked what I read in this one. Kai didn't answer right away. He had learned, over a year, that Wren's silences after her honesty were not to be filled too quickly. I keep thinking about the letter, he said finally. Not the words. The fact that he wrote it to me. Not to the council, not to the island. To me, personally, like he already thinks of this as something between the two of us, and everyone else is just furniture in the room where we have it out. He shook his head. That's the part I can't stop turning over. He doesn't want the island. He wants an answer only I can give him. That's what frightens me most of all, Wren said quietly. Because I know exactly what that feels like, wanting something only one person can give you. I wanted a house to stop being ashamed of me for exactly one skill I couldn't help having. I never got it. She finally turned and looked at him, and there was something raw and unguarded in her face that she rarely let anyone see, least of all him. Promise me something, Kai. If it comes to the worst of it, if it's him or you, really, truly, no clever third door. Promise me you won't stand there being noble until it's too late to be anything else. Promise me you'll let the hunger out first and grieve it after. I would rather bury the man who did what he had to than build a shrine to the boy who died being careful. Kai looked at her a long moment, the wind between them, the grey sea beyond her doing what it had always done, indifferent to every promise anyone had ever made beside it. I can't promise you that, he said, finally, gently. You know I can't. It's the one thing Cower's whole faith is built on, that the hunger only stays gentle as long as I never let it be the easy answer. He reached out, careful, and touched her shoulder, the smallest gesture, the only one either of them ever really allowed themselves. But I can promise you this. I will not let being careful become the same thing as being alone. Not this time. Not with him counting on it. It was not the promise she had asked for. From the way her jaw tightened and then, slowly, eased, it was, perhaps, the only one she had actually expected him to be able to keep. Wren did not stay long on the wall. She went after to the boat itself, because grief and dread both moved better in her when her hands had something to do. It sat hauled up on the black sand under guard, still smelling of char and salt and something worse underneath, and she walked its length twice before she crouched at the stern and went very still, the way she did when her spy's eyes had found something everyone else had walked past. The fire started here, she said to Thrace, who had followed her, uninvited, unasked, and Wren had stopped pretending she minded. At the stern, not the hold, not the sail, the stern, where a man steering the boat would stand. She traced a line along the blackened wood with one finger, not touching. This wasn't an accident that happened to a man crossing the sea, Thrace. This was done to him, in a controlled way, at a controlled point, by someone who wanted him to survive it, and wanted the boat to look like it had barely survived it too. She sat back on her heels. It's theatre. Very expensive, very cruel theatre. Vess didn't just send a letter. He built a whole story for us to believe. And the story is, look what I am willing to do to make a point. Which means the point isn't the one written on the man's ribs, Thrace finished, grim. The letter's the bait. The real message is the boat. The real message, Wren said slowly, turning something small and dark over in her palm, a fragment of glass, half melted, that had no business being anywhere near a fishing vessel, is that he can reach us. Not with an army, not yet. With one boat, one man, and enough patience to make us watch every second of what it cost. That's not a declaration of war, Thrace. She held the glass up to the grey light, and it caught something that was not quite a colour. That's an audition. He's showing us what kind of ruler he intends to be, before he's even finished becoming one. And I don't think he cares whether we're horrified. Her voice dropped. I think he's hoping we're impressed. Block 7. The Dark and the Old Voice in it. Kai went down into the dark that evening, past the sealed door, into the cold room where the last ashman kept his 300-year watch, because there were some questions he had learned to ask only in that particular silence. You knew him, Kai said, without preamble, into the dark. Ves, before, when he was only an envoy. The hollow voice that answered was slower than Kai remembered it, and that frightened him more than anything written on a dead man's ribs. I knew of him, Kor said. A servant of the throne, ambitious in the careful way that survives centuries, the kind of ambition that waits and watches and does not move until moving is safe. I did not think him dangerous. I thought him patient. I have learned, child, across 300 years in this dark, that patience and danger are not opposites. They are the same animal at different distances. He wants to know if I'll refuse him, the way I refused Sail. No, Kor said, and something in the hollow voice sharpened, old bones finding one more edge. He already knows you will refuse him. A man that patient does not ask a question he does not already know the answer to. He is not testing whether you will say no, gentle Ember. He is testing how you will say it. Whether you will say it with mercy, the way you said it to Sail, or whether a burning boat and a dying messenger will finally be enough to make you say it with the hunger instead. The old voice went very quiet. That is the whole of his experiment, child. He has built himself a mirror out of grief and salt water, and he means to hold it up to your face and see which of your two faces looks back. And if he's building more than a mirror, Kai said slowly, if he's trying to take the gift itself, not borrow it, take it. The silence that followed was long enough that Kai began to wonder if Kor had at last gone past answering. Then he is attempting the one thing I hoped no living soul would ever be foolish or cruel enough to attempt again, Kor said finally, and the dry voice had gone colder than Kai had ever heard it. The gift was never a tool that could be handed down whole, child. It was always a wound first, a cutting away, a refusal, the moment an ash chooses to unmake rather than be unmade, to take it from someone else, to graft it, to force it into a vessel that never chose the cut for themselves. That is not craft. That is butchery wearing a crown. And butchery, done enough times, on enough unwilling flesh, does not produce a second ember. The old voice dropped to something almost like fear, ancient and enormous and worn thin by centuries of carrying it alone. It produces only hunger, unwitnessed, in as many bodies as he is willing to spend finding that out. Pray I am wrong, gentle Ember. I have been wrong about many things. I would very much like to be wrong about this one. Kai stood in the dark for a long moment, feeling the ring on his hand as though it had grown heavier in the last few hours, though it had not, could not. The weight was never in the metal. What do I do? You do what you have always done, Kaur said, and for the first time in the conversation there was something almost like tenderness under the dry, ancient voice. You choose the harder mercy. on purpose, where he can see you do it. Not because it is safe. It has never once been safe. Because it is the only answer that does not hand him the thing he actually crossed an ocean to collect. A pause, and then, very softly, "I am tired tonight, child, in a way I have not been before. I think my rest is closer than I told you last season. Do not waste the time you have me for on comfort. Ask me the things you still need to know, while I am still here to answer them." Block 8. The Wall of Blue. He found Thrace on the practice yard after dark, running drills alone by torchlight, the way she did when something in her needed burning off before it could be spoken. "You made an offer once," Kai said. "A wall of blue between me and the dark. No leash." Thrace did not stop moving, but something in her shoulders changed. "I remember. I'm taking it." That made her stop. She looked at him across the torchlit yard, sweat slick and breathing hard, and for a moment the gruff soldier's mask slipped, and something younger and more surprised showed through it. "You've spent a year refusing every hand this island offered you, Ember. Why now?" "Because Vess is counting on me refusing help the same way I refuse everything else," Kai said. "He built his whole letter around what he thinks I am. A boy who carries every weight alone because he's afraid of what it means to hand one to someone else and have them drop it or use it against him. He's not wrong that I've been that boy." He met her eyes. "I'd like to stop being predictable to him. And I trust you not to drop it." Thrace studied him a long moment, and then did something Kai had never seen her do. She sheathed her sword, crossed the yard, and put out her hand, soldier to soldier, not lord to guard. "Then here's my first piece of counsel as your wall, soldier," she said, gripping his forearm hard enough to mean it. "That letter wants an answer written in words. Fine. Write him one. But when the ships actually come, and they will come, Ember, letters are never the whole of a man like that. You will not face them with words. You'll face them with a line of blue between you and the water. And I intend to be standing in the middle of it." A fierce, sudden grin. "Try dying on me and see what I do about it." They questioned the burned man at midnight in a low room with a single candle, because some truths only come out in rooms small enough that lying takes more effort than it's worth. His name, it turned out, was Corin. He had been a fisherman once, before the crossing, before the Empire's ships had come to his shore and taken what they always took. Not gold, not grain, but people, sorted the way a butcher sorts a carcass, the useful cuts kept and the rest discarded. Corin had been kept. His wife and his small daughter had not been discarded either. They had been kept too, elsewhere, as a different kind of insurance. "He didn't burn me for cruelty," Corin said, and his voice, when it finally came steady, was worse than the laughing had been. "He burned me because I asked him not to send me. I told him I'd rather die on the crossing than carry his letter to a lord I'd never wronged. And he said—" Corin's throat worked. "He said a man who begs to die instead of obeying has clearly not yet understood what obeying is for. And then he showed me my daughter. Just showed me. Didn't touch her. Didn't have to. His one good eye found Kai's across the candlelight. I have a signal glass sewn into the lining of my coat, my lord. I was to watch this island for 6 days. Your walls, your numbers, whether the crowns love you or fear you. And then flash the answer out to sea on the 7th night, to a ship I was told would be waiting just past the reef. I was going to do it. I want you to know that. Not because I believe in him. Because I have a daughter. And he showed me exactly what he'd do to her if I didn't." Wren had gone very still while he spoke, the way she went still when her mind was already 3 steps past whatever was being said aloud. She reached out, without asking, and drew back the ruined collar of Corin's coat, and found the glass sewn where he had said it would be, except it was not, on closer look, only a glass. There was fine silver wire threaded through the lining around it, warm to the touch in a way nothing in that cold room had any right to be, and when she traced it with one careful finger, Corin flinched so hard he nearly fell from the chair. "Don't," he said, too fast, too frightened. "Please, don't pull at it." "What is it?" Wren said quietly, though something in her voice said she had already half guessed. "He called it a promise thread," Corin whispered. "He said if I strayed from the words he gave me, if I tried to warn anyone, tried to say anything of my own, it would know. It's not just a signal glass, my lady. It's wired into me, into my chest. He said it would stop my heart faster than any blade, and I'd never even feel the blade coming." He was shaking now, badly. "I have been trying, this whole hour, to say only the words he gave me, and nothing more, and I don't know how much further I can push it before it decides I've pushed too far." The room went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. "He built a man a leash he could wear under his own skin," Sale said from the doorway, very quietly, and for once there was no calculation at all in his voice, only something close to horror. "That is not the work of a man testing whether mercy is worth the risk, boy. That is the work of a man who has already stopped believing mercy is real, and is simply curious how long it takes the rest of us to catch up." Kai crouched until he was level with the shaking, exhausted man in the chair, and did not touch the wire, and did not touch the man, because he had learned, watching Wren work, that some fears need room before they can be reasoned with. "Wren," he said, without looking away from Corin, "can it be cut? Not blind, and not fast, and not by me tonight," Wren said, already turning the fragment of glass she'd taken from the boat over in her fingers, matching it in her mind to the thread beneath Corin's collar. "But I don't think it needs cutting. I think it needs answering. It's not a spell, Kai. Feel how warm it runs. It's craft, mechanical and cruel, but craft can be read the way any lock can be read, given time we don't currently have, and I intend to find anyway." She looked up at him, and there was something fierce and awake in her face that had not been there since the letter arrived. "Give me until the 7th night. I'll have it disarmed, or I'll have a way around it. Either way, this man is not dying to deliver someone else's cruelty. Not on my watch. Not while I'm the one reading the tide code." "Write this down, Fen," Kai said, and the boy startled, fumbling for the ledger he now carried everywhere, pen already out because he had learned, in 3 short weeks, that his lord's quiet moments were often the ones worth recording. House Ash, 3rd entry since the stair was kept. A man named Corin, forced to carry a cruelty he did not choose, because someone chose it for him with his daughter's life. Ode, safety, if it can ever be reached across that water. Ode, the truth, which is the only thing this house has that the Empire doesn't. Kai looked back at Corin, and his voice gentled. "I'm not going to kill you, and I'm not going to send you back with nothing, because a man who returns empty-handed to a tyrant holding his daughter is a man who's just signed her death himself, and I won't have that on this house's ledger too." Corin's face, for the first time since the sand, showed something other than dread. "My lord?" "You're going to flash your signal on the 7th night, exactly as ordered," Kai said, "and it's going to say exactly what he expects it to say, that this island is guarded, that its lord is watched, and feared, and cornered." A thin, hard smile, nothing like Sale's, entirely its own. And underneath it, in a code only a man who spent his life reading tides would think to hide,
you're going to send something else. My answer. Not a refusal, not an acceptance. Just this. He looked past Corin, past the low candlelit room, toward the black water none of them could see from here, but all of them could feel. The way you feel weather before it arrives.
Tell him I don't need his throne. I have a house of my own, and I intend to keep growing it. One debt at a time, the way my steward taught me. Tell him if he wants a war, he already has one, whether I say the word or not. But if what he actually wants is a witness for what he's about to become, out there, alone, on a throne, with no one left who loved him enough to be afraid for him, then tell him to wait. Kai's voice did not rise, and that was somehow worse than shouting. I'll cross the water myself when I'm ready. Not as his heir, as his mirror. And mirrors, Corin, tell him this part exactly. Mirrors don't flinch first. The hall of black stone across the sea did not look like a throne room anymore, and had not for weeks, though Vess had been careful that none of the old court understood why. The cages were new, small, precise, arranged along the lower gallery where petitioners had once knelt, each one holding something that had, until recently, been an ordinary person. A fisherman, a soldier, once, memorably, a promising young mage from the Eastern colleges who had wept for 3 days before the weeping stopped, for reasons Vess did not examine too closely. Each cage held someone who had been touched, however briefly, however partially, by a fragment of the old gift. The embercraft, the unmaking, harvested in small, careful doses from the boy across the water and grafted, with mixed and often screaming results, onto lesser vessels. None of them had held it the way Kai held it. That was the problem Vess had spent 6 months failing to solve. The gift without the witness curdled into something with teeth and no mercy in it at all. Cower had understood that 300 years ago and had cut his own house in half rather than let it happen twice. Vess understood it now, too. Vess simply did not care in the particular way that ambition does not care about the cost of its own experiments, so long as the experiments were someone else's screaming. A servant entered, knelt, did not meet the throne's eyes. Word from the island, my lord. The signal came through, exactly as arranged. 6 nights early, the messenger appears to have grown impatient to please you. And? The surface message confirms the island is guarded and the Lord is watched. The servant hesitated, the particular hesitation of someone about to deliver a second message they did not fully understand. There is a second message, my lord, hidden in the tide code, meant only for you. Our code readers required most of the night to be certain of it. Vess read it twice, in silence, in the low red light of a hall full of small caged mistakes. Not his heir, his mirror. Mirrors don't flinch first. Something that was almost a smile moved across Vess's face. Not warmth, nothing so simple as warmth, but the particular satisfaction of a craftsman watching a difficult material finally begin to take the shape he had always intended for it. Let him call himself a mirror, Vess said softly, to the hall, to the cages, to no one who could answer. Mirrors are only glass, with something dark on the other side to give them their shine. A pause, considering, almost fond. I intend to break through his, and when I do, I want to see exactly what he's had standing behind that gentle reflection all along. Because I don't believe, gentle ember, that it's so very different from what's standing behind mine. A sound rose from the nearest cage then, low and wordless. The sound of something that had once had a name, trying and failing to remember how to use it. Vess did not look at it. Vess had stopped looking at them weeks ago, the way a smith stops flinching at sparks. "There is one more thing, my lord," the servant said, very carefully. "The messenger, Corin, his signal thread registered a full night of tampering. Foreign hands, foreign craft, working at the wire without ever quite breaking it. Someone on that island is trying to save him." Vess considered this for a long moment, and the almost smile deepened into something colder and far more interested. "Of course they are," Vess said. "That's the whole of what he's made of, isn't it? Mercy, spent on people who were never his to spend it on." Vess rose from the throne that had, until recently, belonged to someone wiser and slower, and now entirely absent from the story. "Move the ships up." 6 days, he said, before I was to expect his answer. He's already given it to me early. Something in the red light sharpened, hungrier than patience had any right to look. Let's not disappoint him by making him wait for the rest of the conversation. And send word to the coast cages. I want to know, before those ships ever reach that island, whether Mercy can survive being outnumbered. I have a great many small, hungry proofs down here who would very much like the chance to test it. That was Sigil and Ash, episode 21, The Tide That Remembers, the opening chapter of season 3. Across the water, an old certainty is dead, and a new and hungrier one is already moving. Not just ships, but something far crueler being built in cages Kai doesn't yet know exist. On the island, a boy who once refused a throne has sent his answer back across the sea in a dying man's borrowed tide code, and a council clock and an empire's clock are now, by grim coincidence, ticking down together. If you're new to the story, Season 1 and Season 2 are waiting for you from the beginning. If you've been here since the first crossing, thank you for staying long enough to watch the tide come back in. Episode 22 is coming. The ships are already closer than anyone on Blackflint knows, and so is what's riding in their hold. Until the next tale, this has been Sigil and Ash,